So welcome everybody. I want to introduce myself. My name is Beverly Johnson. I'm one of the co-owners and co-founders of Silverleaf Practice Management Solution. And we're here today with Lindsay Hill of Klear, and she's going to tell us a little bit about her journey into private practice and how she got started and all kinds of fun stuff. So just hang in there and get you a cup of coffee, and we're going to get started. So Lindsay, tell us a little about yourself. We get to know you a little bit better. You tell us about your practice, how long you've been in practice, and then what kind of services you offer, where you're located, all that kind of fun stuff.
Okay, that sounds good. I'm Lindsay Hill. As you said, I run a private practice and I also do mentorship for Psych NP students and new grads. And I really never saw myself in private practice, I'll be honest. I was a Psych NP for like 7 solid years before I even really seriously considered it. And then about 2 years ago, I think, I got really burned out. I took some time off. And I just really did some reflection as far as what did I want my future to look like. I'm a blended family. I have 3 bonus sons and a 4-year-old. So it's busy here in Arizona. So I decided that, time freedom was really important to me. And I was also pretty burned out by insurances telling me kind of how to practice. So I decided you're always going to be curious, Lindsay, if you don't try it out. Like, would it have worked? Worst case, it's not for you. And so then you just switch gears and you do what you've always done.
Right.
So, so then I just kind of started doing my own research, and figuring out on my own kind of what I wanted to invest in to help me start the practice versus kind of, doing that kind of minimally viable practice. I didn't really adhere to the minimally viable practice totally because imposter syndrome. I think I really wanted a nice website. And I just think that in order for me to put those first messages out to be I'm accepting patients, I have a practice, I wanted a website that looked nice. It was not
Go big or go home.
It was not necessary.
Gotcha.
I mean, I was happy to have it, but the imposter syndrome is always something that I've struggled with pretty intensely. I think that was a big reason why I never really saw myself in private practice too, is I liked having the employer or the policies to kind of fall back on,
Mhm.
So I'm oh, I'm not the one pissing people off, you know what I mean? And so in private practice, you have to kind of own your boundaries and own your decisions and the repercussions of those. And it is what it is.
Right.
So it's been definitely a growth journey. I definitely, entrepreneurship has been harder on my mental health at times than I realized too. And so the value of community has really come to play. So part of what I decided is really important to me is to continue that mentorship aspect. Because when I was in community health, I was always precepting. And I always felt more fulfilled when I was working with a student, learning from them learning from me. I loved that. And so I decided to go on social media with my private practice, but it didn't feel really natural for me to try to get patients that way. And so I ended up just naturally connecting with the students and the new grads. So
That's awesome. So you kind of did your private practice and the mentorship together. You're in Arizona. Where are you in Arizona?
Cave Creek. It's kind of North Phoenix, North Scottsdale.
Gotcha. I spent last winter down in Lake Havasu. It was really
Right.
really nice down there. So I would never be in Arizona in the summertime, but the winter times are really nice in Arizona.
Yeah. And that's actually one of the things that having a private practice has allowed me to do is
Travel.
I committed to never spending another July in Arizona, at least is my
Amen.
goal. And so this last summer, we were able to go to Banff for the summer, on a home exchange. We do home exchanges, and that was really cool to be able to work remotely. But anyway, so I went on social media and that was totally out of my comfort zone. I just never saw me as a psych NP saying anything on social media. I just kept everything really separate, and I'm but I saw other people doing it and I was this is interesting. So I ended up kind of running across some of the same issues that the students were having, and new grads. And I put together the Psych NP Boot Camp, which is a 12-week structured mentorship program to help people go from the imposter syndrome to the clinical confidence. And I really love having the variety of income streams. I love being able to do that. I also have a membership community, the Psych NP Network. And so I love having the private practice, having the network, having the boot camp, the variety. For me, I have ADHD as well, and anxiety is super helpful. Yeah.
Same,
And
I'm there with
so,
you.
yeah. So, but yeah, there's definitely been times where it's been lonely and I've second guessed decisions I've made, and did I handle that right? It's a different degree of responsibility you feel. And I think, not having, I never realized, but like, I don't self-structure very well. And so I always just found myself like very structured, but because I was like picking out those environments that were structured for me. So I didn't have to think about it.
Right.
Where now I have to much more think about like my time management. And when you're with your own businesses, you can always be working on your own businesses for as long as you want. And so work-life balance is important to me. And that's difficult, I'll be honest, because if you like what you do too, and you're passionate about it, it's like you can always find the next thing to do.
Right.
So it's hard sometimes to kind of like put the phone away, like put the computer down, like, and go to the park.
Focus
But
on
it's something
family.
I really try to be intentional about. So I think
Stay
that,
really busy with everything. Like you got 4 kids and then running multiple streams of things coming in. Like that's pretty impressive. Like I think women, and I'm not saying men aren't, but I think women are a little better at juggling all of those things. That we're used to juggling things anyway as a mom, and and then having to work and stuff. But then you add entrepreneurship on top of that, and then now you've got a business, and you got a community, and you got mentorship, and you got kids still at home, and trying to get them to soccer practice or whatever, and running a house and doing all of these things. Like it's a lot, and you could very easily get burnout if you're not careful in your management of stuff. And because there is only so many hours of the day, right, and only so much of you to be able to give. And I think along those lines, I try to talk to people about knowing your boundaries too. Like it doesn't hurt you to hire somebody to come clean your toilets and scrub your bathrooms and do that stuff and take that off your plate, or have someone come in and maybe cook dinner once a week or twice a week if you can. Once you get to that point, right, have someone come and help you, even if you're paying family members to come and help you do those things, do the laundry, whatever.
My mom's coming to make tacos tonight because we have my bonus sons, and it just works out well because she loves that. She loves to nanny for my son and be involved. So I definitely am grateful to have supports like that. But you're right, outsourcing is huge.
Yeah, just outsourcing help your business in your home life, all that. Don't feel like you ever have to do it all by yourself, because that's the worst way to try to burn yourself out, to do it that way. So we talked a little about what started you to get into your private practice and everything. If you had to go back in time and give your younger self advice, what would that be about starting your practice?
I would say just like see your first patient, bare bones, minimally viable practice, just do it. It'll be terrifying, but do it and then kind of go from there. Like just take the action step of actually seeing, have the things in place that you need to do that, but then just do it.
Just jump in. Yeah.
Because I think just like taking the action step, messy action steps, has been kind of the theme for the year for me. And it's something that I just never really did before the past 2 years, but it's definitely led to like just a lot more networking opportunities and connections. And that's been really fulfilling for me to have that community again, because I did lose that community. I felt like when I took some time off, from practicing as a psych NP. And it was like those friendships and mentorship, that was a big part of my identity. And so it's been really nice to kind of form new community too. And it's definitely important for my mental health to have that.
I hear that a lot. And I've even experienced that, right? So especially if you're working from home a lot and you're used to going to work every day and having those work friends and just being around people. I'm very much an introvert. So being at home by myself is great a lot of the times, but there are times that you're like, man, I wish I had a group of people to at least talk to. I've talked to my dogs, but I mean, they don't talk back. But having someone that you can relate to, bounce ideas off of, that's huge. Especially, and I think as humans, we're not made to be solo creatures anyway. We're made to be like in tribes and things like that. So having that group of people, even if it's Facebook group of people or, physical group of people. I joined a group recently that it's women 50 or above. We have Zoom meetings twice a week where we can just get in and talk. I think COVID really pushed a lot of people into their homes and stuff. And so we're all trying to come back out and figure out how to assimilate in normal world again. But for your mental health, I think that's really big. And also join groups of entrepreneurs, other people that think the same way that you are thinking. You know, there are meetup groups that are entrepreneurial type of groups. Also a great way to network with people, telling people, you know, what you do and everything, but just finding those like-minded people that you can surround yourself with, and those people are going to boost you up too. And then the life doesn't feel quite so overwhelming, whether that's life with children, life after 50, or being in a business. You have those people that are going through those same struggles that you are. So I think that that's very, very important.
Yeah, absolutely.
Starting any business, right, has its challenges. What do you feel like some of the biggest challenges you faced when you started your practice? I mean, we talked about the imposter syndrome. That's been something in every single of these little meetings that I've had that people have brought up, that we all have that little reptile brain or something that's saying, you can't do it. You're not good enough. You're not smart enough. You know, you can't. And being able to get past that. And even after you start your practice, you still have those feelings like, what am I doing? I know what I'm doing, type of thing. But what other challenges did you feel like you faced when you started thinking about doing your private practice, or even after you started?
You know, I think, that's tough. Let me think here. I mean, the context switching from the different like service lines has been difficult. So I think like almost trying to do too much, you know, and having to like say no to things that are things that even excite me, because it's like you can't say yes to everything and then not get burned out again. But I think I was just like so gung-ho and excited like to be doing work that really like lit me up again, that it was like I'll do this and I'll do that. And you know, I think that got overwhelming quickly.
I think, like you said, the focus. I had that problem too. Like you get one idea and then all of a sudden you've got 5 different ideas, and trying to implement all of those ideas at one time. And then you get overwhelmed. Wait a minute. And then you just kind of go, you have that analysis paralysis type of thing. And you're just like, what do I got to do? I think focusing on one thing at a time, stepping through it, have a goal, you know, like I would like to do these things, but focus. Would you agree with that? Just,
I think continually looking at what's the 20% of the things I'm doing on a weekly basis that are actually like generating me the revenue and like filling me up, versus like the 80% that might not be doing anything, but I'm just doing it because it's like the comfortable stuff for me. Like I've gotten really comfortable with doing TikTok.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, I don't know if you have like goals. I always recommend people set some goals for yourself. You know, where do I want to be 6 months from now? Where do I want to be a year from now? Where do I want to be 5 years from now? And that also allows you to kind of focus on those things that are most important today and tomorrow versus what's important 6 months from now or 12 months from now. That really allows you to keep that kind of stuff in perspective, and you don't feel like you're biting off more than you can chew at any given time, and you can allow yourself to stay a little focused. What would you say the biggest misconception about starting your private practice would be? Some people have said that their misconception for them was that it cost a lot of money. Like they thought they would have to have, you know, $50,000 to start their private practice. Other people were like, the misconceptions were that there was too many nurse practitioners in their area anyway, and they weren't going to be able to be successful. Those are some of the ones that I've heard prior, if that helps you any.
Yeah. I would say like that it's more complex than it really is. Like, I think that in our minds, these smaller things, they seem huge to us at the time when it's like something you've never done before, right? Because it's like the uncertainty and it's a new task to do. But then you're like, oh, okay, I just did my LLC thing or whatever. And you're like, that wasn't like that hard. You know what I mean? Like people are capable of doing this. And I think that like we just kind of get in our heads about like maybe the complexity or the level of like knowledge and skill. That was actually one of the things that motivated me to take this step, was seeing people with less experience than me like out there killing it. And I was like, what, Lindsay, what's going on? This is a confidence issue. Like you can do this.
100%. It's the fear of the unknown, right? I don't know how to start my LLC. And then you get online, you're like, oh, this company will help me do it all, and I don't have to figure out everything by myself. You know, like LegalZoom, InkFile, you know, those type of companies will help you do that stuff. And then okay, what's the next step? And then what's the next step? And then before you know it, you have a whole business, you know, and it's just, there's so much information out there. I mean, the internet is at our fingertips on Googling stuff and finding things and learning and just stepping outside your comfort zone. And I think That's hard for some people though, right? Stepping out of your comfort zone is hard for some people. So just take it the first step. Just do one step at a time. That's it. You don't have to do it all at once. Just take the first step.
Absolutely.
So financial planning, I mentioned that a while ago being kind of a stopping block. So that's vital for starting any practice, obviously. What should someone know on the financial side of starting their private practice? What would the recommendation would you give them? Some people do like, they work full time and then they're doing this on the side. Some people do half and half time. Any financial advice you could give anybody thinking about starting their private practice?
I mean, I think in theory, it would probably be a good thing to like keep a part-time job or like do, a 1099 gig or something like that. I didn't do it like that. And part of it was because I had taken like that 6-month reprieve. And the other part of it was I really felt like it would kind of be like 1 foot in, 1 foot out for me. And I'm kind of like, I just kind of wanted to get in there and do it. And I had the freedom to be able to do that at the position I was in, which I get that not everybody has that opportunity. But I did definitely like take a hit financially on the front end and, had to charge some things that I wouldn't have wanted to, but kind of making those sacrifices and just knowing that like this is just part of like the risk that I'm taking and I'm willing to take, and I think it's going to pay off, but it is scary because I don't know for sure. So but I think that would be security wise a good thing to do. It's not what I did and it worked out okay for me, but I think probably really depends on the person's life situation too.
Right. There's so many variables there, right? Like if you have a spouse that can take up the extra financial responsibility for a little while you get this going, or if you have, some money in the savings, or if you have a way to, pull a little money out of your house that you may have. I mean, there's lots of different options, but I think you might agree it doesn't take a lot of money to get things started up. You can do minimal, if you had a ballpark, I'm not asking you to tell anybody what you spent, a ballpark. If you said, hey, this is what it's about going to cost, for you to get your practice started, what would that be? What number would you throw out there for people like, hey, this is
for people like who didn't necessarily do what I did? Because I think
if you were because we know you went with the biggest, the website and all this kind of stuff, but just to get started, like the bare minimum, what would you say is a good round number for somebody to think, okay, I can maybe do that on the lower, low end?
I think 5,000 to 10,000.
Yeah, I think that's pretty fair, especially with the startup stuff, right? Getting all that done, but then having enough money for the first few months until you kind of get things going, and knowing that you may have to sacrifice some stuff, like you said, charging some cards or whatever. Everybody's financial situation is going to be a little bit different, but it can be done. It's not like you have to have $1 million in the bank to ever get started. You just have to figure out what's going to work for you financially.
Starting their private practice, if they're going to be utilizing social media for any like advertising, just being prepared that when you're putting yourself out there more, like you're going to get more negativity, more hate, more opinions. You're doing something different. And so just be prepared for that. That can be more difficult for some people than others. I've been proud of myself because I've worked on the skill of like just kind of radical acceptance with that. And it's still difficult, it's still difficult to read a mean comment or this or that, or your intentions aren't right, or you're just doing this for the money, or it still is not a fun way to feel when you actually do care and you actually do want to make a difference and you want to make a good living.
Right.
Just feels a little ick sometimes. So yeah,
I mean, I've struggled with that too. I've always been a people pleaser, probably need some therapy for that. I joke. But we've had that problem here at Silverleaf, right? Like we don't always meet the mark. And I'll be honest, like, there's things that happen sometimes. Sometimes it's on the other person's fault, but they want to blame it on us, or it's on us, and we'll acknowledge that. But it's hurtful to see someone attack you and your baby, right? Like you have worked really hard to do what you're doing. You have these goals and all this kind of stuff. And then somebody attacks you and so you're like, that's not fair. You don't know me, and let's talk about the whole situation type of thing. But there are mean people. They're mean people everywhere. And so not letting that get into your head, because again, that's going to stir up that little, imposter syndrome thing. What am I doing? Then maybe this person's right. So really walking through that. And I think even having a business coach is a good idea, where someone that they're not cheap, but they are beneficial to do the rah-rahs for you, especially if you're not getting the rah-rahs at home, because we know some people battle that at home, right? Family. sometimes can always be the most supportive when you're trying to do something like this either. And so being able to have someone that you can bounce ideas off of and you feel empowered versus you're just sitting there by yourself and now you got these, people online talking bad things about you and you just want to throw your hands up. So I'm glad you brought that up. I think that's important too.
It definitely was for me.
Let's see what else here. I've got a whole list of questions. So I know that some people struggle when they're working for someone, right? And you're just running people through every 15 minutes, you're seeing another person and you really don't feel like you can make an impact on those people. You're just really like, any changes, here's your script, bye. When you go into private practice, I think that changes a little bit and you're able to spend more time with your patients and you're able to do the things that you wanted to do that you maybe weren't able to do in a different, place that you were working at. Has there been any memorable patient stories for you, obviously without using patients' names, but things where that patient left and you went, wow, I'm really glad that I'm doing what I do now so that I can make those changes in people. Is there anything that you can think of that you've
There is. I think it's something that I don't take the time to reflect on, but I think that it's it's amazing. It's incredible that I have the opportunity to practice how I'm practicing now. So just yesterday I had a student with me. I have a student for the first time in private practice, a Psych NP student, and we had 8 patients, I think. And one of them had kind of just scheduled online and said I was having a crisis over the weekend. I, almost went to the hospital. And I just really, want to meet with you. And I said, yeah, great. And I knew in the past we'd done hour appointments for more of the psychotherapy. I said, did you want 30 minutes or an hour? She said an hour. And it ended up being really, really therapeutic. And that I had the ability to do that was really cool because this is somebody who was really not wanting to do a daily medication for anxiety and used to kind of relying on benzos and just really uncertain about kind of where to go from there. And so it was just really cool to be able to help her. And I think taking the time and building that rapport, I think that there was a time where she just was not open to an SSRI or an SNRI. But she came around and I just think a lot of that is the trust and the vibe of how I run things feels just much more true to who I am and how I want to show up and provide care for people. So that's really powerful.
Yeah, for sure. I think it makes you realize what you went into this to do, right? You went into this to help people. And I think as nurses, that is our core, right? We really want to help people. It doesn't matter about the money. The money's great, but we really have that need to serve, and help folks. And so when you feel like you're just a cog in the wheel and the patients, you're just running them through them, there's no internal satisfaction, I think, with that. You just are trying to get through your day and see your 20 patients or whatever. When you're in private practice, you're able to slow down. You're able to ask that patient, do you need 30 minutes or an hour? And be able to make those connections with people that you're not able to make in those other situations. And those people trust you, right? And then what happens when they trust you? They send other people to you. They talk about you. They, love you. They want, they want to come live with you, but camp out with you. I'm just kidding. But they definitely are. They see you more as a friend and a confidant than just this person that gives them meds, or, I think they're used to people rushing through and just wanting to give them meds and not actually hearing them and seeing them. I think, I've heard these stories from providers over and over that they were really able to change the way they wanted to practice because it's on their terms and what they want to do on a day-to-day. And that's been very different for them and very eye-opening for them as well. So where do you see the future of mental health going, and how is your practice, or how are you preparing for that?
So, with the pandemic and kind of the increase in access to services and telehealth, I see that I see the advocacy happening and to kind of not remove all of that. And how do we kind of sustain that and keep people connected with their services? And so I think for me, I'll probably maintain my, I guess you could say I have a hybrid model because I do rent space in Scottsdale at a therapist's office, but I'm really primarily telehealth, honestly. But I think moving forward, just kind of aiming for kind of that hybrid model with my practice will be a part of my approach, whether that means eventually I'll get my own space. Not sure yet. For now, I'm content with where things are at, but things are subject to change. So,
Yep, sure. And that's a great thing about doing what you do is you can be real flexible in doing different things. How do you use technology in your practice to improve like your patient outcomes, your patient satisfaction? What software programs are you using? What have you found that works? Maybe you've tried things that didn't work. If you could tell people like, hey, this seems to be working really, really well. This is what I use. What would you tell the audience?
Mm-hmm. I would say I have just like a couple things that I really love. I love my intake queue, practice queue. I love my Spruce. I love my Get Freed AI charting assistants. My Zoom. If there's
Okay.
anything else. Yeah, those are, I just kind of like the basics of like, honestly, I feel like my patients are very satisfied with the care that they receive. They love knowing like that they can get a hold of me. I love not having like a telephone kind of practice where it's like, I'm getting phone calls that stresses me out. Like I would much prefer to like get the message, and they like it too. They like that convenience and the ability to do a little bit of like asynchronous problem solving, I think is also really nice for some of the patients that I have. And I didn't have that before when I was like working at some of the places that I worked because it wouldn't have been feasible and appropriate. But I really enjoy getting to provide that level of care. And for the most part, people really respect the boundaries much more than I anticipated.
I
And
think
they
the boundaries are what you make them though, right? I mean, if you just kind of go at it like, hey, I'm your friend, you can text me 50 times a day. But if you set some strong boundaries with your patients, I think that helps a lot too. Because I've had providers say the other thing, right? That they hated the text messages because it felt like people were just texting them all the time. So it's good that your patients respect your boundaries. Did you put anything in process to let them know? Or do you just feel like it's kind of just has happened?
I think it's mainly happened. I will say I have set the tone probably at that initial appointment to say like, hey, kind of giving them examples of when it would be appropriate to reach out, then if it's bigger situations where we kind of need to assess what's going on, let's just schedule you an appointment,
Right. Yeah.
but I kind of give them examples of like the appropriateness of how to use Spruce. And I think that that does help. But I have had like two cases where it got out of hand and I've implemented my boundaries. I've had to do like,
Oh, we're freezing again. Okay. You said you had some cases that they got out of hand, and then that's where it cut off.
where like I have had to do my boundaries of like, okay, here's a green boundary, here's a yellow boundary, here's a red boundary of like, you know, um, we're kind of like you need a different level of care, like, I'm not going to be responding to these messages, um but yeah, for the most part it's just been like really lovely to be able to like exchange information in a really efficient way. And it's nice for them too, I actually get labs and I get things, because
Right.
they're like, oh, okay, I just attach it on Spruce, like, so yeah.
And so,
I
yeah. I think patients like that. I mean, we kind of moved into that text world, right?
Mhm.
I hate it when I call a doctor's office and I can't get through to anybody, or I have to leave a voicemail and no one ever calls me back, or they call me back. I'm in the middle of something, I'm in meetings and stuff all day. And so then we're playing phone tag back and forth. If I could just text them, and then they text me back whenever they get a second and I can text them back. I think that just works for most people's daily lives, even.
Right. Yeah.
Those canned texts that you can just pop in and send to them that you don't have to sit there and text every single time. And then the boundaries for sure. I mean, I think in life at all, I mean, all across the board, we should have boundaries, but with those patients, it's very important to set those. And so that's awesome that you have the discussion with them up front, let them know, and then can just not call them out, but you know what I'm saying? Like really just able to
Mhm.
put back on them. I know I've had some providers say, if it's going to take me longer than 2 minutes to
Mhm.
respond, then we just need to have an appointment. Because you probably have had this situation too, where people will send you this big long text and you're like, oh my gosh, we just need to talk. Like, well, you need to come in. I can't keep going back and forth with these novels. Because one, you're not getting paid for those, right? But if it's that complicated and I can't answer it very quickly, then you just need to come in and we'll
Mhm.
have about it. So, but yeah, people try it, especially if you're cash pay. they want to kind of scoot around that and not actually come in. They just want to ask you a bunch of questions online. So I think that can be a problem too, that people can run into. So I know we helped you with Silverleaf has helped you on your journey to your private practice. Can you tell people a little bit about how we helped you and if you'd recommend us again? I mean, obviously, if there's things that were problems, I'm open to hearing constructive criticism too. But if there's anything you could tell anybody about using our services, what would that be?
Yeah. So I definitely would recommend using Silverleaf. I think the biggest benefit that I gleaned from working with you guys was setting up a system that worked for me in a more automated way than I could have ever done by myself. Or even with somebody who's pretty techie, like my husband, even with his help, like we couldn't have figured out what Silverleaf was able to do. And so, like, I love the ability for patients to answer the screening questions and book that tentative appointment, and then I can approve it or decline it. It's really great for my patients. I've heard other NPs have different opinions on that, and everybody's going to practice a little bit different and do what's right for them, right? But for me and for my patients that I am referred, they love that flexibility, and I love that I'm not back and forth with patients trying to get them scheduled. That was one of the things I was really stressed out about, is like support staff and me having to do a lot of that stuff. And so I feel like for me, I looked at it like an investment in not needing to have support staff, because there's these automations that you guys were able to implement, as far as even and then their appointment books, they get sent this new patient paperwork, and then when they fill out the paperwork, like it's automatically back in the chart, like stuff like that, which like maybe sounds really easy, but if you've worked in other settings and like manual kind of archaic processes, like that stuff gets really time consuming and frustrating for the patient and support staff. And so I just really didn't want to like have to deal with that. So the ease of like the communication of the systems, I really, really liked a lot. I think that's like the biggest like takeaway for me, as far as like recommending you guys. I also liked that when they fill out the new patient paperwork, that it flows into that first psyche eval. No, I liked that as well. So yeah, I really liked working with Silverleaf. You guys were definitely efficient. If anything, you guys were waiting on me. My only bit of constructive criticism is the psyche eval is a little bit like clunky for me, a little bit like click, 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 click heavy. But I think for me too, like I am cash pay, and most of my clients don't submit super bills. So like,
and it works for you. Yeah. Doing something simpler works for you. Yeah.
Yeah. But I would definitely not have the ability to manage like 3 businesses if Silverleaf hadn't set it up such that that things are automated for my patients, for me. And so that is, largely like a huge benefit that I gleaned for my practice.
Okay. It's been a while, because you've been in business for how long now? You were kind of one of our first.
It seems like 2 years.
You may be going on almost, is it 2.5? It's been a while. Like you were one of our beginning clients, and we're fixing to start our 5th year in January. So I think, or you're kind of maybe in the middle there, maybe somewhere, but yeah, it's been a while, because I know me and you haven't talked in at least a year, maybe a year and a half. So it's been,
I think I get like confused with my time frames. But I do think it's been longer than I even realized. So I've learned a lot, but for me, well worth the investment, because I remember being on the fence about that. And I think I talked to you about it, like the screening process. And because my husband was like, you're going to have them fill like these 14 questions out. You don't want that, right? And I'm like, no, yeah, I do. If they're going to be self-scheduling, like, yeah, I do. I need to like, but again, people have different opinions on that, but my patients seem to have a problem with it. I mean, I've gotten very few people complaining. I usually just acknowledge, hey, I know it's kind of a lot at the front end, a lot of paperwork, like, thank you. Nobody really complains though. Like nobody really, people just kind of like, I think that that it's clear to them, clear, get
Mhm.
it, clear, clear,
There you go.
what they're expected to do on their end, you know?
Yeah.
Like yesterday, it's like I had a patient, oh, I haven't gotten the Zoom link. I'm like, you'll get it tomorrow, like that kind of stuff. I can't tell you how much drama I had in community health with my support staff about Zoom links and sending them
Mhm. Just
like
goes automatically. Yeah.
things like that. My patients don't miss their appointments. Like things are very streamlined and efficient, and
Mhm.
Silverleaf had a huge part in that. So I'm
Yeah,
very
you talk about the screening stuff, I think is hugely important because if it's not a good fit for you, then you can, right then, instead of them coming into your office and then you both feel, I mean, I think as a patient coming into an office, if we're not a good fit, I would have liked to have known that first up front, instead of wasting my time coming in, going through the whole thing. And then you tell me, you know what, I don't do this, or I don't prescribe control substance, or I don't treat ADHD or whatever those things are. And I
Mhm.
go, great, I waited how many weeks for this appointment, and now you're sitting here telling me that you can't help me, and so now I've got to start this whole process over. I think having that screening tool up front where you're able to not weed out the patients that you want to, that you I had somebody say, well, it's cherry picking. No, it's not. It's making sure that you're a good fit, that you
Mhm.
want to take this patient on.
Mhm.
My boyfriend is of the other, aspect of that. He's like, I'll just see him. I've been a nurse practitioner for 14 years. There's pretty much nothing that I can't handle. I may refer them out once I see them, but I hate for them to try to go find care somewhere else because it's very hard in Colorado. But
Mhm.
he just takes everybody. He doesn't screen. I would screen because
Mhm.
there's some things I just don't want to, I would want to take on. So I
Yeah.
think that's I think it's a positive thing, honestly. I mean, there's several questions to ask, but it gives you a better idea of what you're signing up for. And you have in private
Mhm.
practice, you definitely have that way to say, I don't want to. I don't want to
Mhm.
take this. It's not something that's going to be a good fit for me. I'm not going to be happy. They're not going to be happy. Like this isn't a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah,
I
one of the things I would say that I really like, I was concerned about just like, oh, am I only going to be seeing really entitled concierge-ish people who like just kind of want to pay for what they want and like don't really want to like get better. And that really hasn't been the case. And so I've been really, really pleased with that, and also like people are really grateful for their care. And
Mhm.
so that's felt really, really good. And also it hasn't like sucked my soul because it is soul sucking for me to work with people who don't actually want to get better.
Yeah.
And I'm like working harder than they are. And nothing makes me feel like more of a failure of a psych NP than that situation. And so not having to deal with that, huge relief, huge weight off the
Hugely.
soul.
And you talked about them filling out the paperwork. It is a little long, the
Mhm.
all the consents and all that kind of stuff, but it also shows you their dedication to coming to see you. To me, if
Mhm.
they're like, I can't fill out this paperwork, I'm like, you're 25, you can fill out this paperwork. You got a smartphone, probably, you can fill it out. I mean, we all know that people get into some really dark places in their life sometimes, and even getting out of the bed to brush their teeth is difficult. But those are the exceptions more than the rule,
Those are
right?
the exceptions.
That's
Yeah.
why
And
you
of
take
course,
these
we'd
people
be
down.
willing to,
Right.
work with people,
Right, like that, yeah.
Yeah.
But the majority of the people can fill the paperwork out. They just don't wanna do it, and they don't wanna sign the consent form, or they don't wanna give you their credit card. And I think, again, those are boundaries. Like, "Hey, if you can't fill out the electronic paperwork, then maybe we're not a good fit for you at my office because we do everything electronically," you know? Maybe you
Mhm.
need more, case management type of stuff. Maybe community care is better for you if you have, you can't get access to a computer, or you can't, get on your smartphone and do this kind of stuff or whatever. Obviously, there's exceptions to that. But people will allow you to enable them if you let them. And then the paperwork, just, or the credit card, even. We run into that all the time. And I've had people say, well, they're Medicaid. I don't need to get a credit card from them. Yes, you should get a credit card from them or a debit card, because if they don't tell you that they're Medicaid termed, and then you get this bill back that Medicaid didn't pay, then what? You'd have no way to even try to get anything from them. So, I don't know about you, but my hairdresser makes me put a card on file. If I don't show up, they hit me for the whole amount. So
Yeah.
it's not something that's uncommon anymore, I think, with, credit cards on file and that kind of thing.
Like, oh, I was gonna say there's been two instances where I kind of like approved people for appointments where I was like, my gut was kind of telling me no, but they were
Mhm.
like referrals and like the people reached out who referred them, and I was like, we'll give this a chance. But anyway, both were not like the right level of care and created a lot of extra stress for me. So I would just say listen to your gut with those,
Yeah.
because I mean, I work 2 days a week. You know what I mean? I'm not like an urgent psychiatric care center. I'm not an IOP. Like, and I think
Right.
sometimes, what people need is more than I'm able to provide. And so, I would say just trust
Yeah.
your gut and refer out.
100%. And I think sometimes in the beginning, you feel like you need to take every patient that comes to you, right?
Mhm.
Like you're like, oh, I need money coming in, but those can come back around to bite you, because if you take those really, really lots of comorbids, lots of issues and stuff, you are only one person. You're not a, case manager. These people are going to drain a lot of your time. And it's not that they don't need help, right? But they need to go somewhere that can allow them a lot of help. They have social workers. They have, all these people that can supply the needs for these folks if you can't do that for you in private practice. And so there's places for those folks, and not being afraid to say no, that I'm not the good fit for you here. I think that does the patients a service too, if you're able to be honest with yourself and know that that's just not going to work out well for either one of you.
Right.
Because it's frustrating for the patient too, right? To come see you, they get, adjusted to you. And then all of a sudden you're saying, I can't do this. You got to go.
Right. Right. Exactly.
So that it's doing you both a favor. So
Mhm.
I don't want to take up a lot of your time. I appreciate you so much for coming on here and sharing your experiences and stuff with us. Is there anything else, any tidbits of information or anything else that you would want to tell the audience before we get off of here? Anything that
I
we
just
didn't?
think about thinking about, for me, what I ended up doing is kind of like assigning value to the work that I do, like a dollar amount, and being like, okay, if it's something that's less than this, like, can I outsource X amount, per hour kind of thing. And, I think when people even look at like making an investment, like, I don't know, I can't remember exactly how much I paid for my Silverleaf stuff, maybe 5 grand. But when you think about like the time investment too, of like, if I were taking the phone calls of like screening people and scheduling myself, like, and I've said, okay, your time is worth this amount, Lindsay. Then that kind of stuff pays for itself pretty quickly usually. And so yeah, look at those revenue generating tasks, automate where you can, be efficient where you can, because it will lead to less burnout and frustration for you, and thus you'll be able to show up better for your patients.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because we had a provider that came to us and she was wanting us to help her, but she felt like she needed to control everything. She needed to do her own billing. She needed to answer her own phone. She needed to do all of this stuff. And then when the bill came, she was like, I can't afford a virtual assistant. But because she wasn't charting, she wasn't leaving herself enough time to chart, to bill, to collect the money, because she was doing all of these other administrative tasks that she could easily hire out, right, for cheaper. So I'm glad you mentioned that, because your time is money, right? So if you see a patient, let's just say, it's $200 an hour, you're
Mhm.
making $200 an hour. Why would you be doing a job that you could pay somebody else $20 an hour to do? Right. So if you stay in your lane, we all have control issues. I think both of being type A, entrepreneurial type of person, but you have to be able to say, I can't wear this hat anymore. I need to give it to someone else, pay them less, and let me focus on what I'm meant to do, and I think it's a
Mhm.
good idea to learn how to run your front office, and a good idea to learn how to do the billing, but that's not something that you can hold on long term, especially if you're wanting to grow and get busier. And then outsourcing the other things, like you said, it's going to take you longer to figure out how to do it, set it up and all that, and you've wasted that money and time that you could have spent elsewhere. So I'm glad you said
Yeah.
provider, hearing that from a provider, I think is very powerful.
Yeah. And I think thinking about, for me, big thing I thought about was like the user experience, and
Mm,
what's this user experience going to be? Is it going to be frustrating for them?
mm,
And like, yeah, just the fact that they know that their card is going to get charged this amount. They know when. I know that. Like, it just reduces frustration and stress for everybody, because it's just
I
like,
agree.
it either is a fit or it's not a fit. But either way, it's like we're not wasting energy having to talk about like the financials. Like, I didn't want to do that.
Most providers don't want to handle that money part. And so having that all taken care of up front is much easier than trying to collect people from people on the back end. And, and we all, we offer training and stuff to help people learn how to do that, run their front office and all that, because you just don't know what you don't know. Right. And you want to think that everybody's going to be truthful and pay their bills like they're supposed to. And it just doesn't happen in the grand scheme of things. And so having everything streamlined and automated, even for providers that may have been in business for a while and they're sitting there going, gosh, this has got to be easier. Figuring
Mhm.
out those ways to streamline things and make your life easier and smoother Yeah, it may cost you a tiny bit more a month, maybe, it may not, but if you can get all those service line type of things figured out where it's just running automatically for you, it's going to save you a lot of time and, like you said, prevent that burnout. So all right.
Exactly.
Well, again, thank you so much for taking time out with us. And I really
Cool.
appreciate all of your insight. It's going to help a lot of providers, when they're thinking about starting their private practice and everything. I wish you the best of luck, and let us know if there's anything that we can help you with in the future, and take care of yourself. Okay.
Okay. Thanks, Bev. I
Thank-
appreciate it.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.